I do want to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about How About Marketing. How About Marketing is essentially a hub for everyone to get better at their marketing, but in all honesty, it's more than marketing. It's a place where people connect. It's built initially for marketing-savvy business owners, but it has expanded tremendously to everybody involved in marketing, campaign managers in SEO, search engine optimization, paid advertising, social media, project management, and so forth. And one thing that everybody has in common and beyond the marketing departments is communication. And I strongly believe that after today's session, you will be able to be a better communicator in your relationship at work, at home, friends, presentations, everything that's communication related. Without further ado, I want to first give a shout out to our partners before I'll introduce the guest, and our partners who have been around for a while. So it's Joachim, Aspiration Marketing, Kevin, Organic Growth, Toronto Marketing Hub, Level Up Media, Toronto B2B Marketing Community, and GCFI. Shout out to our sponsors and to everyone who's watching us. Now, today's guest is Phil Tashi. Why don't you take a couple of seconds to introduce yourself and to let our audience know who you are and what do you do?
I would be very happy to do that. Well, my name is Phil Taski, and I do several things. So I think Em probably already mentioned that I'm an author. I wrote a book called Speak Like a Pro, Everything You Need to Know to Survive Your Next Speaking Gig, which is essentially a compendium that has everything, every trick, every lesson, everything that I've ever learned about speaking. I tried to put it all into one book in a concise, easy to digest manner, in a way that you can really take the skills and apply them immediately. So that's one thing that I do, and I train people on facilitation, on public speaking, and whatnot. What I primarily do is I work in leadership development. And right now I'm working for a large national corporation that is developing a new foundation for leaders. It's a very large organization, 60,000 people. We've got 5,000 managers, and we're developing this brand new way of developing leaders. One of the things that we do is we really talk about personality and we talk about DISC. And so that's where this comes from. And my real passion, I guess, is helping others. You know, if I have a superpower, if I have a secret sauce, it really is to shine a light in the dark depths of your inner caves, to point out the gold, the diamonds, and the gems that you have within you that you might not be aware of. So what I'm hoping that we're going to be able to do together is get some of those insights, discover some of those gems, polish some of that gold, and have something that is, for me, what is really, really important is something that is applicable immediately in all aspects of your life. And understanding personality will absolutely do that for you.
There's nothing to add to that, Phil. Really, I feel like this is extra. So without further ado, the virtual stage is yours.
Thank you so very much. And thank you so much to all of you for joining in today. My sincere hope and expectation is that all of you, whether you're familiar with this or not already, will glean something, will gain something, will come out of this with something that you'll be able to use in your life. I'm obsessed with the idea of persona. And one of the reasons for that is that I am the son of a man who was Greek, but born in the Ottoman Empire, of Greek and Armenian ancestry. I myself was born in Belgium. My mother is Irish. My wife is Pakistani. I've lived in Quebec. I've spoken en français. And so when it comes to who am I, what is my identity, this is something that I've always found really interesting, because you can live in a country with a different language, and you probably understand this, where you at a certain point start dreaming in that language. But the core identity of who you are doesn't really change. It doesn't matter the culture that you exist in. Who I am has a consistency. Now, it'll be molded, shaped, influenced by the environment that I live in, but essentially who I am is who I am. And I often think of this wonderful poem by the great poet Rumi. Rumi was a 13th century Sufi mystic. Brilliant person. You know, just a few years ago, he was the best-selling poet in America, 700 years after he passed away. So kind of interesting. One of the reasons for it is because he's so deep. He's so deep. And he has this poem, and he basically says, I'm going to paraphrase it. It says, who are you? But who are you if you're not a man or a woman? If we take that label away, who are you if you're not a son or a father, daughter or mother? Who are you without your nationality? Who are you without your age? Who are you without your culture? Who are you without your religion? Who are you if you don't exist in this space and time? When all of the labels that have been put on you and that you have put on yourself are shed away from you, what remains is you. When I first heard that, it was very, very profound. It was really, really profound, because I intuitively understood that we aren't our roles. The roles that we occupy in our lives are the things that we do. But who we are is something deeper, more elemental, more foundational. What we're going to do today is explore how we can discover that about ourselves and how we can discover that about others, right? Because it's important to have self-knowledge and self-awareness, right? Growth comes from that. But we also need to be able to understand other people, because 80% of all of the miscommunication that happens, whether in a business world, whether it is the employee or the executive level, it's all miscommunication and it's all misunderstanding, because I don't know what you really want and you don't understand what I really want. And so there's a simple tool that we can use, which is personality assessments, that helps us discover that. So before I get started, you know a little bit about me. I want to ask a question to you. What is one word that you would use to describe yourself to someone who doesn't know you? Just one word. And I invite you to put that into chat. Now, I know some of you are going to be like, hey, listen, one word is not enough. I got a lot of words. I don't want to use them all. So if you want to use more than one, you can. But try to just think of one word. You're describing yourself to someone who doesn't know you. How do you do that? Don't use your name, a different word. Right? And what's interesting about that is we have a sense of who we are already. Right? And today what I'm going to be able to do is help you confirm for yourself who you might be. The other thing that I want you to think about before we get started is I want you to think about intentions. Right? As you look at yourself, as you hold up a mirror to see yourself more clearly, who you are, your personality, and what your likes and desires are, what is an intention that you have for yourself? Because I think when we start with that, it helps guide us forward. So is it that you want to communicate better? Are there difficulties that you are experiencing with certain individuals in your life? Do you want to be more clear? Are you having a hard time holding on to employees? Whatever the issue that you might have, set that out as an intention right now, that this is what I would like to have.
And we have the words on the screen right now. So we had I lost what we have here.
Dedicated. I love it. Nice. Humble. Nice, Cindy. Persistent. Thank you, Delia. Curious. I like that, Kevin. Friendly, Sabrina. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for all of you for sharing. And I invite you to continue sharing and use emojis and reactions and all of that. Let me know that you're out there and that you're enjoying this and that you're getting something from it. So I hope that you set a bit of an intention for yourself. Now let's get right into it. So if we go to the next slide, we'll have a little look at what is our objective for today. And the objective is really simple. We don't have an awful lot of time. So what I really want to do is I want to give you a broad description of what the 4 personality types are. So DISC is an acronym that stands for each of the 4 different personality types within this system. And it's important to remember that this is a generalization, right? This is not there is no intent here to pinpoint you and to say exactly this is all that you are. We are complex people. We have individual experiences, individual knowledge and perspectives and insights and all of that stuff. So what this is it's giving you a general direction, right? So that you can kind of understand and maneuver through the world by understanding what the signs are, right? But it's not a complete description. So I don't want you to think that when we're talking about personality assessments, that it is this exact, precise thing that is going to predict everything that you do in your life. Humans are way too complex for that to happen, right? So really what this is it's a tool that helps us navigate the world and all of the obstacles that we are facing on a day-to-day basis. So our objective is basically going to be to describe the 4 DISC personality styles, and then to think about how can we apply them to communication, to good communication. Right? And that's the applicability part that I was talking and promising you that I would deliver. So that's our objective for today. And let's move on now to thinking about what is personality, right? What is personality? Personality really, it encompasses an individual's unique and enduring patterns of thinking, feeling, and here's the big one, behaving. There's a predictability in people's behavior based on the personality type that they have. Right? And this is how we are shaping our interaction with the world, and also how others perceive us. Okay, everybody good with the definition? Is there anything in there that anybody feels is not included, that you would like to alter, that doesn't speak to you? If you do, you can put it into chat. And if not, we're going to keep going. Looks good, Sabrina says. Excellent. I like it too. It's concise, it's precise, and it tells us what we need to know. Because sometimes we think, okay, well, we're going to talk about personality, but let's define the term. What does it actually mean? All right, let's go on to our next slide and pursue our topic for today. So you think, okay, personality types. Who came up with this? And what's really interesting is we have intuitively known for a very, very, very long time that there are certain personality types that are describable, that are perceivable in the world, in the people that we know. And one of the first people to write about that was Hippocrates, way back in the 3rd century BC, almost 2,500 years ago. Now, Hippocrates, you will probably know because he gave us the Hippocratic Oath. This is the oath that doctors have to say before they start practicing medicine, right? I will do no harm, I will take care of you, all of this kind of stuff. He's the one that came up with that. Not only did he come up with that, but he came up with the 4 humors. 4 humors. Now, they've changed a little bit. You know, it was sanguine, it was phlegmatic, it was melancholic, and what was the last one? If anybody can think of it, you can put it into chat. Having a little bit of a break for it. But what we realized is that it wasn't quite precise, but we were starting to inch our way towards something. Lots of time goes by, lots of philosophers and thinkers have looked at this. But the next really big breakthrough happens in the middle of the very beginning of the 20th century, the very end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, with guys like Freud. And so Freud, in 1923, he proposes that the mind is actually shaped by these 3 areas: the id, the ego, and the superego. I'm not going to go into Psych 101 because all of you have probably learned a little bit about Freud. But at the same time, contemporaneous to Freud was this other guy, a professor at Harvard University called William Marston. And he's a fascinating guy. He really is. I mean, he's so smart. Not only did he come up with the framework for DISC, but he's also the inventor of Wonder Woman. Yeah, that's right. The comic book hero, Wonder Woman. And thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. Thanks for helping me out. I owe you one. So not only did he come up with Wonder Woman, but he also came up with the lie detector. And the lie detector initially was just this cord that would go around your chest, and that would measure your perspiration, your heart rate, all of these various different things. And they would look at that and say, okay, you're telling the truth, you're not telling the truth. Now, think of Wonder Woman. She's got her lasso of truth. It's around you, and it's a cord, right? So there's a connection already. But William Marsden came up with this really wonderful way of looking at and analyzing personality based on these 4 types, which was kind of a reinvention of the 4 original personality types that Hippocrates had talked about 2,500 years ago. All right, so there's all the boring science history stuff for those of you that are not that interested. I find this stuff a little bit fascinating because I'm a little bit curious like Kevin is, right? So that's a little bit of the backdrop on how we come to DISC, right? Because sometimes we want to know, where did this come from? Now you know where it came from. Let's go on to our next slide and start thinking about how we approach this. Now, here's the thing. 2 questions will allow you to more or less understand what somebody else's personality is, their main personality type. That's powerful stuff. The first question that we're going to ask is, are you a more outgoing person or a more reserved person, right? Do you consider yourself to be more extroverted or more introverted? Now, I know some of you are like, well, you know, it depends on the situation. Sometimes I'm extroverted, sometimes I'm introverted. When do you feel the best, right? Like you're in your skin, you're in your body, and you know, this is me, right? You tend to be more outgoing or more reserved. And you will have one preference: extroverted in the morning. You're an extroverted person. I think you know that about yourself. But so this is the first question that we ask ourselves. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, well, what exactly does that mean? 100% extroverted for Em, absolutely. So let's go to our next slide and let's look at the difference between what is an outgoing and a reserved person. Okay, so I'm talking pretty quick. I'm moving my hands, I'm leaning in. I'm an extroverted person, right? You probably noticed the same thing when Em was talking. So when you're an extroverted person, you're outgoing and you're active, which means that you like things that are fast-paced. Here's the thing. Extroverted people talk and think at the same time. In fact, if you're a really extroverted person, your best ideas, your most insightful things are always happening in a conversation. And sometimes you don't even know where it comes from, but you are in your flow, right? Talking, you're thinking, it's coming out. That's the extroverted individuals, right? They tend to be pretty enthusiastic, pretty positive, pretty optimistic, right? They're the ones that are looking at the glass half full. They're going, I got half a glass, what more can I get? That's outgoing. Now, reserved, and here's an important thing. One is not better than the other, right? It takes both. It takes two to tango, right? So you need both in the world, or the world would not be a good place. Now, the reserved people, they move at a slower pace. And you might ask yourself, well, why? Because for them, they want to think. They want to imagine what's going to happen before they go through. So for them, they don't want to just do something quickly and get it out. They want to lean back a little bit and play it out. They want to game play it in their head and go, okay, where is this going exactly? Should I say this? Is this the right thing to say? And so that slows things down, which is not a bad thing, right? They're more cautious because they're kind of concerned about what might happen. What are these unpredictable things? The outgoing people are like, if something happens, I'll figure it out. The reserved people are like, hey, listen, I want to be prepared if something goes wrong. What am I going to do? What's my plan B to this? And so they tend to have more critical thinking because they're doing more thinking before they speak. So the quiet ones, they're the reserved ones. Right? And it's not because they don't have anything to say. They're saying it in their head. They're just not ready to share it with you because they want to test it out. They want to make sure that it's the right thing before they say it. So they're more cautious and a little bit more discerning. Their focus is on thinking things through. But now with that description, if you consider yourself more outgoing, type outgoing into chat. If you consider yourself more reserved, type reserved into the chat and start keeping track of yourself and how you see yourself.
We have some comment in the meantime.
I had no idea there was a difference in the way we think. 1,000% I think confirmed. Yeah, exactly. And so we've known this for a long time, right? That people react in different ways. If you've got siblings in your family, you're not all thinking the same, right? You've got the one that's always talking and active and animated, and then you've got maybe the other ones who are very quiet, very reserved, very methodical. And yes, you can be both, Jen. It is absolutely possible to be both because we are a complex assemblage of the four types. So you might have a propensity or a, one that dominates, but you have all of it within you. Everything that every man or woman has, every man or woman has. We're all humans, right? We all share the same stuff, but some of us have a preference as opposed to others. Outgoing mostly. Thanks you, Delia. Let's move on to the next slide. So that's the first question. The first question is, are you more outgoing or are you more reserved? Second question, are you more task-oriented or are you more people-oriented? Right? And what is the difference between that, right? Like what is the difference between someone who's task-oriented and someone who is people-oriented?
We had a question, very interesting question that I would like to know your thoughts on, Phil.
Please
Sorry
do.
for
Yes,
interrupting.
sorry.
It's on the screen right now.
How about ADHD? Now, ADHD is a mental health condition, right? It's a wiring of the brain, and that is a separate thing completely. So personality is personality, and then on top of that, we have things like ADHD or obsessive compulsive disorder or a whole bunch of different things, and that can affect anybody with any personality type. It's a separate thing altogether. And I am not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm a guy who did Shrink 101 way back in university. So I'm not going to talk too much about ADHD, but in terms of personalities, it's a separate thing. Does that answer your question? I hope it does. Excellent. It's as good as an answer as I can give. I'm not going to pretend to know things that I don't know. I don't think that it would be fair to you for me to do that. So I'll limit myself to the knowledge that I do know. What I do know about ADHD is that it can be very difficult to manage if that is something that you've got or you're living with someone who has it. All right, so let's continue. The second question that we're asking ourselves is, again, are you more task-oriented or are you more people-oriented? Let's go to the next slide and look at what the difference between one and the other is. So here's the thing. If you're a task-oriented person, it doesn't mean that you don't like people. Of course you like people. You're a human, right? Without people, life would not be good. We all like people. But some of us prefer to spend our time doing things. And whether someone is there while we do it, whether we do it in a group or not, is a secondary thing. It's not the primary thing. The primary thing is that I'm doing something. And so if you're a task-oriented person, you like form, you like function, you like plans and projects, and you like the process. You like doing it, right? And some of you are going to feel that that's you. The people-oriented individuals, they're interested in relationships. They're more, they think in terms of feelings as opposed to thoughts, right? Like task-oriented, if you're talking to say an employee who's you think is more task-oriented, you ask them, how are you thinking, or what are you thinking? Whereas with the people-oriented, you would maybe go, how are you feeling? Because they're more grounded in their emotions. And so for them, it's about relationships, it's about caring, sharing, feelings, and friendships. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't like to do stuff. They like doing stuff, but for them, they want to do it with people. And the relationships that they're building as they do things, the people that they're surrounded with while they do things, that is as important as the task itself. So that's the difference between the one and the other. And so I'm going to ask you again, just like we did with the last one, in chat, which one are you? Do you see yourself more task-oriented or more people-oriented? And if you don't like typing, you can put TO or PO.
Until then, I'm going to take the opportunity to put what Sabrina said in there.
I use the word friendly to describe myself, but in my head, professional did stand out more. I'm reserved and task-oriented person, very much strongly for these two. Maybe wanted to seem more friendly. I like it. Very nice. Task-oriented, people-oriented for Delight. Kevin is 60% task, 40% people. I like that you've got it down to like down to the percentage point. That's good. Amazing. People-oriented for Jen. Thanks for sharing. And you're more people-oriented. That comes across loud and clear in the conversations and interactions that I've had with you.
Men of the people.
Men of the people. I love it. And Cindy is people-oriented. Lovely. Thank you also very much for sharing how you see yourselves. So when we take both of these, right, and so we've had two directions, right, north, south, and east and west, that creates 4 points on a circle. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see how it all comes together. Voila. That's how DISC is essentially formed. So if you are someone who is very much task-oriented, so you like the form, the process, and you're an outgoing person, you think quickly, you're optimistic, you move quickly, you want to get things done, let's get that done right now, then you are a D personality type, primarily, right? If you're very outgoing and people-oriented, you're an I personality. So if you love telling stories and getting involved in lots of things and getting to know everybody and everybody knows you, you're an I personality, right? You're people-oriented and very outgoing. But now what if you're people-oriented and more reserved, right? You like having deep relationships, but you're a little bit shy, right? You're not like, hey, I want to be friends, like the I personality might be, right? You're a little bit more reserved, but you are all about relationships, your emotions, and connecting with people. And then the last is the C personality type, which are reserved and task-oriented. So they tend to be, I have a colleague who is a C personality type, and he says, I'm the cactus. I'm a little prickly on the outside, but I'm all soft and gushy on the inside, right? So he's reserved and he's task-oriented, and that is the C personality type. All right, shall we continue? We good to go? Let's go. So let's break each of the personality types down just a little bit to get a sense of who and what they are, because there are certain things that I think if we understand about each other's personalities, we can get so much more out of it. Now, the D personality type, what I really think is so important is to understand what is the motivation, right? What is the motive to the action? And for a D personality type, someone who's very outgoing and who is very task-oriented, for them it's about challenges. It's about having choices, and it's about having a sense of control. Not necessarily control over the world or over a situation, but over themselves primarily. And then if they can, over others too. So how does that manifest itself? Well, the big question that they're asking is what? What do you want from me? What should we do? What? Right? That's the question that preoccupies the mind of somebody who is a primarily deep personality type, right? Because they want to be seen and they want to be heard. They want to be seen as important and significant. And sometimes what that causes is a sense of defiance. So when they're not in their happy place, when they're not balanced, right, and they want to have the control and the choice, they'll be defiant and sometimes withdraw. And that is, in a way, gaining complete control over the entire situation, right? I'm just defying I'm taking the entire thing and like nullifying it. My big move, right? So that's how the defiance sort of plays into this. But their strengths versus their weaknesses. So for example, deep personality type, because again, they're very outgoing and very task-oriented, will often come across as being very, courageous and goal-oriented, competitive, self-confident, and self-reliant. But again, like I was talking about the balance, right? Because we're all looking for balance in our lives. If you're courageous, but you're not balanced, right? You're going to be one of two things. You're either going to be cowardly, or the risk for the deep personality type is reckless, right? Where courage is out of balance, and now I'm endangering myself and the people around me, right? So being goal-oriented can be very aggressive and sometimes offensive or even maybe a little bit ruthless. So this is why self-knowledge and this process and understanding this is so important, because we are able to then self-regulate, right? So for me, I'm a high D personality type. And I always I need to take a step back constantly, because I just want to jump in. I want to take control. I want to take charge, make things happen. But I'm not giving other people opportunities. And sometimes I haven't done enough of the thinking that I need to do for the action that I take to be the most effective, efficient, and precise. So having that self-awareness, taking a step back, not just reacting, but responding, allows me to have greater control over myself and the interactions that I have with others, right? So deep personality types, they like lots of activity, they like competitiveness, and they like a challenge. And they don't really like when there's a lot of talk that's going nowhere, or some activity that doesn't have a clear goal. They want to know, how do I win this game? That's their big thing, right? Give me the rules, give me the objective. How am I going to win? All right, let's go. And they're competitive and they want to make it happen, right? So that's the deep personality type. Maybe that's you, right? Or maybe it's somebody that you know. Because as I describe all of these personality types, one thing that you're going to start to do is you're going to start recognizing people that you know that are this way or that way or this way or that way, right? So deep personality types can, again, because they're leaning out, they're talking fast, they're talking quickly, they want that control. They can be a little bit blunt. They're not afraid to speak out in a situation, right? So if something's not, for example, you're at a restaurant, you get a burger, the burger sucks. Some people are like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to pay my bill and go out and not say anything. Deep personality type will probably go, excuse me, waiter, can you send this back to the kitchen? It's not right. So they're not afraid to speak up, right? And again, it doesn't make them better, it doesn't make them worse. That's just the way they are, right? Okay, that's the deep personality type. Let's go to the next slide and look at a few more things.
Before we move on, Phil, there's an interesting conversation going, and I wouldn't want to move on before we address some of the things that our guest had said. So it's on the screen right now.
I think throughout the years, my personality has changed due to circumstances. They definitely can happen. I tend to adapt my personality and actions based on the situation. All right, let me give you an analogy. I wish I was in my office, because I would have my little prop that I keep beside, but I don't have it. So you're going to use your imagination. In my hands, I'm holding an invisible elastic band. You know an elastic band. Sometimes you wrap your money, you wrap something around it. What does an elastic band do? It stretches. And when you let go of the elastic band, what happens? It comes back to the shape that it was designed in. So what happens is there's two aspects of us. There's the internal aspect. It's kind of like the difference between nature and nurture. Your nature, DNA, bred in the bone, from the moment you enter into the world, that's nature. Nurture is what happens in the world and how it shapes you. So if you have a certain personality type, that is your comfort level. That is you, right? But if you are, say, somebody who is not decisive, but you're in a leadership position, you're going to learn how to be decisive. The thing is, when you're operating outside of your comfort zone, you're expending a lot of energy, right? So if you're a very introverted person and you have to perform, you can. Right? I know lots of very introverted, task-oriented individuals who are facilitators or speakers. So for them, when they're done, they're exhausted. They're exhausted. They need to go have a nap, lie down, go into a quiet room, turn off the lights, and recharge. For me, when I'm with people, when I'm interacting with people, it's like I got both my fingers and I'm plugging into the wall and I'm just, and I'm getting charged up just from the interaction. Right? So if I'm in a situation where I don't have the ability to interact with people and I need to be more subdued, I can do that. But it takes energy. It takes a lot of energy. And so your core personality, who you are as, kind of bred in the bone, that stays pretty consistent. And there are people who have tested all throughout their lives and they get the same results. But then if you're in a situation that requires you to be different, to act a different way, to pull some different aspect of you, then you are able to do that. And that's what I mean by, all 4 personality types, you will have one that is your main type, right? So it's kind of like when the dust settles, it settles a certain way. That's who you are at your core, right? But you blow it up and it all goes up. That dust, it's the same dust, but now it's occupying the entire space, right? So you have the ability to do that. And that's why you will sometimes feel that your personality might change a little bit, because the demands of the circumstances that you find yourself in require you to find some other aspect of it. Some people have a very hard time doing that. Some people find it more easy, right? That's an individual thing. But you are able to occupy whatever personality the situation requires for you to function and succeed within it. Does that answer your question? I hope it does.
Sabrina said you describe me perfectly, Phil.
Because all of us, to a certain extent, are doing that. When you get a job, it might not be your ideal job that is ideal for who you are, right? We got to pay bills, and we get the jobs that we get. And sometimes if we're obliged for our jobs to live a different reality, to be a different type of person. And then when you go home, when you're with your buddies, when you're hanging out, when it's just you, you're able to be yourself. Like I have twin girls, 28 years old. And so I've seen personality, and they've had a different personality from day one, and their personalities have stayed consistent. They grow, they mature, they have experience, they have all of these things. Are very complex women, but who they are at their core, again, as a generality, because this is not like an exact picture that I'm painting. It's more broad shaped. Those shapes have not changed in the 20 years that I've known them as a father. So.
I couldn't have said it better than you're amazing, Phil. Thank you, as Ronak said. And Jen says thank you as well. But this is not the end. Phil still has a couple of slides.
We're just getting rolling here. Let's move on to the next slide and look at the next part of our D personality types. So, really, when it comes to communication, because for me, this is really where the rubber hits the road. Right? How are you going to communicate? And how do you recognize somebody who's a D personality type and their preference in their communication? So as a D personality, you want to get to the point, right? These are the guys and the women who, when you're having water cooler talk or you're telling a story, they're like, yeah, get to the point. What do you get now? What are you trying to tell me here? Some people will, they'll go over here and over there and circumvent and this and then this and then that and then that. And the D personality is like, oh my goodness, can you just get to the point? That's their preference. So if you're dealing with a D personality, what are you going to do? Give them a lot of fluff? No, right? Because now you're creating friction. So knowing what they want and being able to reposition yourself to communicate in a way that addresses that is very, very, very helpful. Very, very helpful. And like I said, they're not afraid to speak out. They tend to be very declarative. So one of the things that I need to do is remind myself to ask questions, because it gives the other person an opportunity to speak. And then, there's a dialogue as opposed to sometimes a monologue. So D personality types can sometimes give a little bit of monologue. I accuse myself, and I am guilty as charged. And again, because they're outgoing, they tend to move their hands. They tend to lean in. They speak a little bit more loudly and a bit more declaratively. And because of that, sometimes you come across as being a little bit insistent. The D personality type is, of the 4 personality type, the rarest. There's only about 10 to 15% of the general population that are considered D personality types. So if that's you, that's you. And if not, someone. Maybe it's a boss you have, maybe it's someone in your family, a neighbor, a friend. The D personality type, and I just described them to you, and you're like, oh my God, I know this guy. So let's move on and have a look at our next personality type, which is the I. Now, we're still looking at the outgoing individuals, right? So we have the outgoing D personality type. Now we're looking at the outgoing people-centered individuals. And these are the people who love to tell stories, right? They're inspiring to listen to. They're influencing all the time because they're right in the thick of the people, right? They're imaginative and they're impulsive. And one of the things with the I personality types is that sometimes they come across as being a little bit illogical, right? Because if they see a shiny object, they're on that shiny object. So they can easily be distracted, right? And they have their hands in a million different things. And that's really cool, right? Because they're really entertaining. And if you think of most of the comedians, a lot of the actors, a lot of the people who work on stage, comics, a lot of them will be the I personality type. They're very extroverted. They want to talk. They want to share. They want to tell you everything, right? And they want to know all of the people that you know. All right. Some of their strengths and weaknesses. So the strength of an I personality type is that they're really carefree. They're outgoing. They're talkative, personable, fun, spontaneous. Oh my goodness. They'll think of something. Let's do it right now. That's the kind of person. But because of that, sometimes they're a little unfocused. So when we're working with them, we need to sort of check in and nudge them back onto the path every now and then when they see the shiny object and they want to go, oh my God, that's so interesting, let's do that. Oh my God, that's so interesting, let's do that. We need to draw them back, right? And so one of the things is because they're so interested in people, because again, look at what the primary motivation is. What are they looking to get done? They want to be recognized. They want, hello, can you see me? Can you let me know that you see me? I need to know that you see me. I need to have the approval of the group, to feel like I'm part of it, right? And I need that sense of popularity. So when you know that this is the motivation of an individual, you're able to present things in a way that is interesting to them, right? In a way that they wanted to receive things, right? So their weaknesses, again, they can be a little bit undisciplined sometimes. Sometimes they're a little egocentric, it's all about me, a little frivolous, a little impulsive, right? But all of us have the positive and negative aspects of our personalities. We just try to find balance, right? It's about trying to find that balance in your life. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide and look at the next aspect of the I personality. So in terms of communication, again, because when we're talking to someone who because we've asked the two questions, right? What are the first question? Outgoing, reserved, people-oriented, task-oriented. So once we ask that about the person that we're dealing with, we can see them in their communication, right? So what is it that they want in terms of the best type of they want to have lots of time so that they can just speak freely, right? So their perspective of time when they're speaking is a little bit all over the place, right? They speak in a high volume, fast-paced, lots of hands, lots of gestures, and their emotions. When they're happy, they're happy, and when they're sad, they're sad. So they're really very, very, very expressive. But for them, they need to be recognized, seen, and felt to be popular. So when you're dealing with someone like that, this is where flattery works. Oh my God, that's a great outfit. That's really interesting. Thank you. Those kinds of compliments go a long way with an I personality because it makes them feel that they're recognized, that they're being appreciated, that there's some approval. And that's important for them because, again, this is how we manifest ourselves in the world. We need others to see us for us to feel like we were seen. All right, that is the I personality. Let's keep things moving so that we can get through everybody. The next one that we're looking now is at the S personality type. Now we've done the outgoing, now we're doing the reserved. And the S personality type is reserved, people-oriented. So for them, they are all about creating a supportive environment for others, right? They like things to be steady and predictable. These are the people who don't want any change. And when change comes, it's like, oh my God, why did you have to change that? It was my favorite thing. They like the predictability of waking up in the morning and knowing how the day's going to roll out. And when there's a change to that, it's discombobulating for them. They're not in their best position. They're a little shaken by that. And again, because they're introverted and people-oriented, they tend to be a little bit shy, right? They'll share with you, but they're not going to be as outgoing because, again, they're reserved, right? So you can see how they're interested in people. Because they're interested in people and they're reserved, they're cautious about how they come across. So they're not going to be explosive. They're going to be a little bit more shy. So let's think about what is it that is, the true sort of motivation for them. My wife is a high S, and I'm telling you, the big one is appreciation. Remembering to not just feel it, but to actually say it, right? So for them, they need appreciation, and they need security and the stability that comes with that, and the assurance that it's going to continue to be this way. So status quo is really, really important. These are the people who are always asking you if they can help. When there's problems, they're the peacekeeper that wants to come in the middle and look, okay, let's calm down, let's listen to both sides. If they're on a team, they want to make sure that there's an equal distribution, that everybody is seen, that everybody has been included, right? They're kind of like the glue. They're almost like the mommies and daddies of the group. They want to take care of everybody. They're supportive. That is their superpower. And it's absolutely wonderful. You see so many people that are high S's that are things like nurses, right? Because nurses need to have that caring, that support for others. So you will often see that kind of person becoming, that kind of doing that kind of work. So what are their strengths? The big thing is super dependable. I mean, you can depend on an S personality type. If they give you their word, they're going to see you. They're going to see it through. They're very, very dependable. They're efficient. They're very diplomatic. Like when I said, they don't like disharmony. They don't like confrontation. They're always going to be looking to be the diplomat that soothes things out, that makes things good for everyone. And they're stable. They're stable and predictable as a person. You know where they stand, and they're always going to be there. And that is a wonderful quality to have. It's so powerful to have that as a person. What are their likes and dislikes? Well, for them, again, they love peace, stability, teamwork, right? Being part of a collective. And they don't like surprises because, again, they like the status quo. They don't like misunderstandings because that leads to confrontation, right? So whenever there's something that goes wrong and somebody steps in to want to fix it, chances are they're probably an S personality type. All right, let's go on to our next slide and see how they like to communicate. All right, so in terms of their communication, they are the listeners. My wife is a listener, and which is a good thing because I'm a heck of a talker. Give me a microphone, I'll never put it down. And so, you get that balance, but they're great listeners. They talk softly. They're a little bit more reserved. It's like, is everything okay? They tend to be more leaning back and leaning forward. And, they're patient and peaceful, right? And so they come across as being very reassuring. And that, again, is a really powerful thing to have. All right, let's round it up to our last of the contestants, which is our C personality type. Okay, so now the C personality type, what is it that is motivating them? What's the driving force? What do they need to have satisfied in their life so that they're satisfied people? Well, for them, it's about quality answers, value, and excellence. They don't want BS. They don't want you to tell them, hey, man, everything's okay. It's like, no. Show me the proof. Their motto is measure twice, cut once. Make sure, because they're all task-oriented and all reserved. So they're analyzing everything all the time. These are the people who are often accountants, or editors, or people who have to, really look at details and do that kind of analysis, right? Because they like working by themselves, following strict form and function, and getting the most that they can out of that. So they're really cautious, right? Again, cut twice or cut once, measure twice. They're thinking, they're calculating, they're critical thinking, but because they're very unemotive, right? You don't see a lot of smile, you don't see any emotion, and sometimes they come across as being cold. And it's not that they don't have emotions. Of course, they're humans. They keep them inside. They're reserved. And so don't think of them as being cold, because they're not. It's just how you see them and how you're perceiving them. So again, they're super cautious. They are always looking for the best way to do things, for data to support the position. They're very sensitive. They're very thorough. They're very orderly. They're curious. Somebody said that they were curious. I wouldn't be surprised if you're a C personality type. And they're always questioning, right? And they want things to be precise. Again, don't give me the BS, give me the data. All right, let's move on to the next slide and have a look at the way that they like to communicate. So when it comes to communicating, their big question in life is why? Why is it like this? Why are we doing it this way? Is this the best way possible? Have we considered all of the options? Because again, they want to make sure that they're doing it right. right? They want to make sure that they're doing it the way that it's supposed to do, the way the rules say you should be doing it. So they tend to be less verbal. These are the people who prefer to write, communicate by email, by chat, rather than picking up the phone or talking in person. They tend to be much more formal, right? And again, like I said earlier on, they use thinking words as opposed to feeling words. For them, it's more about how I'm thinking as opposed to how I'm feeling. And they ask lots of questions. So they're the opposite of me. I do a lot of talking. I have to remind myself to ask questions. They need to remind themselves to stop asking questions. And one of the problems with that they could struggle with is indecisiveness. You constantly want to do an analysis. Is it, like, okay, wait, before I make the decision, let me get some more data. Let me get some other thing. Let me ask this person. Let me ask that person. And so that can sometimes, create this molasses of movement when it comes to actually making decisions. So that's an area they need to work on to be their best selves. How are we doing for time, Em?
We are kind of like at time, unfortunately or fortunately.
Not at all. So let's go to the next slide, and we're going to end it there. So the next slide is
go a little bit over.
All right, it's coming full circle, right? And the full circle really is that those are the 4 personality types. And when you think of the 2 different questions that we're asking, right? Outgoing versus reserved, task-oriented versus people-oriented. Now, it's not an exact thing, right? It is just this guide that helps you understand how you should approach things. And let me give you a little scenario. Say I'm a salesperson in a store, right? And I've got a client that comes in. Now, the D personality type doesn't want the fluff. Right? It's show me what you got. Let me make a decision. Right? And they're going to decide quickly, on what they want. The I personality type, if you start telling them about, what the cell phone does and all of its features, they're like, okay, do you not see me? Hello, my name's Phil. You want to acknowledge me? You didn't say anything about this nice shirt that I'm wearing or how pretty I am. Can we acknowledge me before we get to that? Right? The C personality type is the opposite, right? It's like, listen, don't ask me about my family. It's none of your business. That's personal stuff, and I'm not really prepared to share that. Can you tell me about the phone? Like, what does it actually do? What are the features? How much memory does it have? How many pictures can I take with this? They want the details. They want the data, right? And the S, what are they looking for? Is it reliable? Is it dependable? Will it keep working? Can I trust this thing? Or am I going to have to keep updating? And is this going to make me change things every 2 minutes? So now if you're a salesperson and you look at someone, the way they move, right? They're not using any hands. They're speaking softly, but smiling and a little shy. So you know they're an S, right? Just from their body language and the way that they're interacting. So now when you're selling to them, how are you going to sell? Right? It's not the same way as you're going to sell to someone who's a C personality type who wants all of the details, because they don't want the details. They want to know that you're giving them something really good, that's dependable, and that isn't going to force a lot of change in their lives. So having this information is really, really vital. And you can get a sense of who someone is by asking 2 very, very simple questions. This is why I love DISC, because it is easy to understand, it is easy to relate, and most importantly, it's easy to apply. It's easy to apply. It's easy to apply in your relationships with your significant other, with your children, with your colleagues, with your neighbors, in your social network. You look at people's behavior and you ask, are they outgoing or reserved? Are they surrounded by people? Or are they by themselves doing stuff? Now I know generally which personality type. I know what your motivation is, and I can address that. So for the D, what did the D want? You want challenges, you want a choice, and you want control. Here are the choices you have. What do you think? Right? I'm giving you control. You make your choice. Right? So I want you to think of how you can use this in your communication, in your actions, whether it is within your own business, whether it is within your circle of influence, your friends, family, whatever it is, including and importantly with yourself. Right? And my sincere hope is that the tools that you've gleaned from me today will help you alleviate some of the misunderstandings, some of the miscommunications that proliferate our world, and that are these friction points that we have with people and situations. If we take a step back, ask those 2 key questions by observing the person that we're dealing with, and then ask, how can I pivot? to create a win-win situation. So it's not everything that I want, and it's not everything that they want, but I'm now moving, I'm bending the lights in this direction so that they get what they need and I can get what I need. So with that, I want to thank you so very much for joining in today, and I want to thank Em and Sabrina for being such fabulous hosts and giving me and giving me this opportunity to share something that I'm really passionate about, that I think is so vitally important that all of us should know and understand, because I know for me it has made my life better.
Phil, with your permission, I do want to take a couple of more minutes, if you have the time, first
to
address, to get the people opportunity to ask live questions if they want here. And I'll let Sabrina put on the screen some of the comments that some of the people have made already. I'll let you read them. So I haven't, that's why I'm...
All right, I'll read them out loud. Thank you for the information. Enjoyed learning more about these personality types. Feedback for future. Manage time to ensure that each personality type gets equal amount of time. There was a lot of dialogue during type D. Well, you know, I'm a D personality type, so I appreciate your feedback, and it's well taken. The rest of the presentation felt rushed. It would have been nice to spend more time learning how to improve communication with different personality types within the allotted time. That is too much for the allotted time. I'll tell you what, you can contact me by going to my website. I do these presentations, and my presentations that address all of your concerns are much longer. So what this was an amuse-bouche. A little whetting of the appetite, a little understanding of what lies behind that curtain. And if you want to know how to use it, if you want to have the opportunity to practice this in breakout rooms, sessions, and things like that, then that is the best way for you to go forward. But I take your feedback and your growth point very well, and I appreciate it, because honestly, one of the things that we sometimes have when it comes to feedback is our back against the wall. But again, like my example about the burger, right? If I'm making a burger and the burger sucks and nobody ever tells me that the burger sucks, I think I'm killing it every time, but I'm not. And until somebody tells me that I can do better, I'm not going to do better, because I have no reason to. So I'm always open to feedback, and thank you so much for giving me your insights.
Look what I found.
Ooh, look at the amount of markers in there. I like that.
Somebody took notes. Another comment from Sabrina. Thank you for the presentation, very eye-opening.
I have a question. I do a lot of cold calling to leaders. People are usually quick to get to the question. What is this about? Are D personality types usually in leadership? Yes, they are, right? They seek leadership out because they like to have challenge, control, and choices. So it's when you get into high levels of leadership, like executive level, mid-management to executive level leadership, where it's not someone who was doing the job who has been promoted to a team leader or an entry-level manager. They tend to be D personality types, because what is leadership really, right? It's about making decisions. And the higher up the echelons you go, the bigger the decisions and the more of them you have to make. And you got to make them quick. So it's a quick analysis. So they don't need any of the BS, right? They want the facts straight and then making a decision. So absolutely. Or is the situation of being on the phone making people less patient? I'm thinking I should tailor my talk tracks based on personality types, maybe based on how they answer the first question. Absolutely. What I would do is I would craft a few questions for yourself that allow you to sort of get a sense of that, right? One question that is centered around, trying to discern whether they're outgoing or reserved. And you can find within your industry, within what it is that you're doing, a phrase, a question that would be appropriate, that wouldn't seem so out of place or transparent, right? And then the second question for people-oriented versus task-oriented. If you have 4 separate scripts, one for each of the personality types, and if you're able to do a quick analysis, and it doesn't mean that you're rewriting the whole thing, it's the focus, right? Because what is it that I want, right? If my personality type is D, I, S, or C, I have different wants. So tailored for that.
Okay. Thank you so much, Phil. Thank you again, Jen. Thank you, everyone who attended. The feedback was positive, was very engaging. Thank you so much. Phil, before we go,
absolutely,
where do people can get a hold of you again and get this book as well?
philtasky.com.
Part of being the host and being the owner is that I can go a little bit over time at the end of the day, and I don't want to take too 2 minutes to discuss two things. One, because you mentioned Rumi, I want to bring Rumi as well into this conversation. I actually heard about, I didn't realize who Rumi was, because in my back in Romania, we learned about it a little bit. At his, when I visited Cappadocia in Konya, it's his tomb. So I felt a certain vibration, and I learned more about him probably 12 or 15 years ago. And I've discovered how influential Rumi was in Western societies as well, because right now it's very accessible to everyone, but it wasn't that the case. So only certain people, certain scholars that shaped the society that we live today had access to him. So he's more present than one might think about Rumi. So
absolutely.
If you don't know, now you know, go learn about Rumi. And thank you so much for introducing, starting the presentation with Rumi. What could have been better?